On this episode of Locked On Angels, who are the prospects that should be called up and who on the Major League roster needs to be sent away? We're going to give you some potential names and reasons why they should play or be sent away. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is, and yes, we are. We are the #1 Angels podcast, and thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all this Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started.
Thank you for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
We're talking Angels baseball here on Locked On Angels every Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss it because we're getting into the conversations you want to have each and every day. On today's show, which players should be called up from the minor leagues, and which ones should be farted away, shot into the sun, planet Mars, Mike, away from this team. I've got some names, but first let's recap last night's game. The Angels fell 5-3 in Kansas City against the Royals. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, you know, John, I have a thought about this game and I have a thought about the rest of the season. And the thought is this: the Angels have to decide if they're going to play for the wins or play for development, right? And last night was a good example of that. We'll talk about Victor Mederos in just a moment, but the Royals did beat the Angels 5-3 last night. They got on the board first. Carson Fulmer had a runner at first base. His pickoff throw bounced past Nolan Shawnuel. The runner moved up to second, and then Salvi Perez, noted Angel killer, singles, and the runner scores. And that guy is he's like 56, and he's still playing really well. Like
he's 34. Mike.
I know he's only 34,
crazy?
Right? It feels like he's been around forever. And then the Royals added 3 more runs, and they made it 3-0 on a Paul DeLong home run. He crushed that pitch. I was actually surprised, John.
Paul DeYoung.
Paul DeYoung. Yeah,
yes.
Sorry, autocorrect. I looked up his name and wanted to see his stats. Wanted to see where he was at this season. He's got 20 home runs.
Yeah,
he's having a great season.
He was wasting away on the White Sox, and so they made that move. So yeah, he was wasting away there. He made it 3-0 after 4 innings, and then the 4th innings is all Carson Fulmer could go. 5 total hits, 3 runs, 2 earned, 3 walks, and 4 strikeouts. In the 5th inning, Mike, the Angels had a chance to respond. Logan O'Hoppe doubled to right center, would have been a home run. At Angel Stadium, as I noted. Brandon Drury took a walk, 2 on and no outs. How confident are you in this situation? Well, Seth Lugo struck out Mickey Moniak. Struck out Joe Adell. And struck out Taylor Ward with a strikeout. Looking. So there's your the Angels are going to get through it, and it's gone.
And there is a narrative out there, a conversation of like that strike zone was a bit inconsistent, kind of low, right? And so there were some arguments coming from the Angels dugout, but the reality is that you just can't strike out looking in that moment.
No,
you have to make some sort of contact. That ball that Ward struck out on, it did touch the bottom of the zone, and he's too busy bending down, looking at it, trying to sell it. When you got to make some contact and move the runners over. And that's the thing that you and I've talked about often, and everydayers have talked about, is moving runners over, making contact is so important, and it keeps the base runners going. That's what they talked about in the offseason. Bo Porter's like, hey, we're going to make it really difficult for the pitchers and for the defense because we're going to constantly be moving. Well, you can't constantly move if you're not on base or if you're not making contact. And that was the issue in this inning in particular.
Everybody looked in between on their swings throughout this whole game. It was indecisive. It was, do I swing? Do I not swing? Do I take this pitch? It just, nobody seems to have a game plan. And the only game plan there usually is clear when you're watching an Angels game is ambushing the first pitch, which is what Zach Neto was able to do in the 8th. He got his 18th home run. But there was that moment in the 7th inning where they finally got some runs before Neto's home run. Joe Adell hit a 2-run double to make it a 2-run game. It didn't last long because the Royals scored 2 more on a Salvador Perez RBI double. Again, noted Angel killer, Salvi Perez. But yeah, Zach Neto ambushed the first pitch for his 18th home run. And again, Logan O'Hoppe singles in the 9th inning, but Mr. Rally Killer, Brandon Drury, with his pouty face and his pouty, can we just get this guy off the team at this point? I know we're going to talk about who needs to go, but the thing is like, what is he there for?
Is this spoiler alert, John? This is a spoiler alert. You're already giving up what we're going to talk about in the 3rd segment because you're done with Drury now. Is what
I'm just done with Drury, and you want to say spoiler alert? Well, he looks like a spoiled little kid out there, and just like you just watch Logan O'Hoppe have a great at bat,
right,
and get that single to get things going, and it was a hard hit ball off the glove of Bobby Witt Jr., who, by the way, is everything that he is written up to be, right? Defensively, offensively, stealing bases, doing all of that stuff. But Logan O'Hoppe gets it started. Drury grounds into a double play, and Mickey Moniak hits one, grounds out, and that's the game. And so it just boggles my mind that you just watched Logan O'Hoppe work this count against Bubic was his name, and then you go up there, first pitch hacking, ground into a double play. You haven't hit a home run since May, Drury, or maybe even April. Yeah. So I don't quite understand what you think you're going to get out of an ambush swing against this reliever. I don't understand it at all.
Yeah, I think it's Bubic. I think that's how they pronounced it, Bubic. But he was good little lefty. And I looked at this Royals team, John, and I did some baseball reference searching last night because I'm looking at Lugo, the pitcher, who wanted to be a starter and didn't want to be a bullpen guy. He wanted to be a starter because he's got a ton of pitches that he throws. So the Royals sign him 2 years, $30 million. Dude's making $15 million a year. Pretty reasonable money, right? Mm-hmm. For a guy who now has 14 wins on the season, right? 14 and 7. I mean, this guy's having a phenomenal year. ERA hovering around 3. And then I just look at what they did in the offseason. The Royals added some pieces that they could afford. They built around Bobby Witt Jr. They still have Perez as their catcher, right? Like they put a really good team together and they didn't break the bank to do that. And now they're pursuing that 3rd wild card spot. Yeah. This should have been a reversal of roles. The Angels were that team. Yeah. 10, 15 years ago, they were that team that was always pursuing and always in it and always battling and always had that really good signing or that guy that came through, the Jerome Williams, where like, oh man, he pitched really well here, and
I don't know about Jerome Williams. But
well, he had
your point stands.
Had a couple of good starts, but then you also had good starters and Dan Herron and some of those guys that they had around, right? CJ Wilson, your fave. And so it was frustrating to watch the game last night, not because the Angels didn't win. It was frustrating to watch that game because of what the Royals had done in the offseason. You're like, the Angels could have easily done that. But even to take it further, something I mentioned earlier, like it's a game where they were chasing a win instead of chasing development, right? And I think they need to chase development. They need to have, and we'll talk about the players that they should call up. They need to have the young core just go for it because you mentioned it. O'Hoppe, great at bat. Singles, gets on. And then Brandon Drury grounds into a double play. It feels like the young guys are pushing a boulder up a hill and the old guys are jumping on top of the boulder, pushing it back down.
Yeah, they're standing in front of it, holding it from going up further. Yeah. The point about Victor Mederos, I think, is this. So he gets called up. He went 2 innings, 4 hits, gave up 2 runs. But here's what I think is important for us to take away from this. When you say chasing wins versus chasing development, to me, watching Victor Mederos go out there for 2 innings and do his thing and skirt around some hits and have 2 scoreless was great. Yep. And then to see him come out for that 3rd inning and cough up a couple of runs makes me go, okay, so now you know that you can probably get at most and at best 2 innings out of Victor Mederos out of the bullpen. I think that's great. I think that they can learn a lesson from this outing from Victor Mederos. But in order to play Victor Mederos, you had to DFA Jose Cisnero, who, hey, thanks for coming. Thanks for rehabbing and pitching 28 pitches and then see you later. Bye.
Right.
And I don't have a problem with that. I like that they made space so that Victor Mederos can be part of this team and they're able to put in some of these young guys. I know he's on the 40-man roster. Maybe there's some other names you would have liked to have seen above Mederos, but the fact remains he's on the 40-man. It's an easy swap. But I look at what this situation was on Monday night's game, and it, again, to me, it says, all right, he had 2 great innings, and that 3rd inning, he started to struggle.
Right.
At least you know what you can get out of Victor Mederos out of the bullpen as somebody out of the pen. And I think Monday night is a case of development. You learn that from watching Victor Mederos do that.
Yeah. I've always liked Mederos, especially in spring training. He had a couple of really good starts in spring training, and I think he went 3 or 4 innings in those games. And so I've always liked his stuff, and he looked good in the first couple of innings, right? He looked good in those 2 innings before that 3rd inning that he came out and then really struggled. But John, he's a young guy. He's learning how to pitch, and I like that they gave him an opportunity. And you're right. Evaluate it. Okay, he's about a 2-inning guy right now for us. That'll be perfect. We'll bring him in. Probably great for like a Carson Fulmer start, because Fulmer goes about 4 innings and then they yank him because that's about as much as they can get from him, almost like an opener, like we've talked about before. So I think the Angels have to decide if they're going to chase wins or they're going to chase development. And it still feels like it feels like inside the organization, it feels like they're going, man, lost again. I just don't know what's going on around here, right? Like,
how did that happen?
What else do we need to do? Who else do we need to call up? What do we? That's all we can do as Angel fans when we talk about this organization is assume what they're thinking instead of them telling us. And they're not going to lose anything if they tell us. Can I just keep banging that drum? They're not going to lose.
No,
anything.
Mike, you're going to give away their secret plan that Artie Moreno is concocting with Perry Manassian.
Yeah.
You can't show your hand. You can't tell the media. You can't tell your fans what you're going to do because then you'll show your hand, and you can't do that.
And then they won't show up. They won't show up. They won't buy tickets. They won't come to games. Have you seen Angel Stadium? Like, the attendance isn't what it was in the last few years, but people are showing up, and they've had some good giveaways, and so. Keep doing that. You're doing great. People are going to show up. People are going to randomly show up. It's Orange County. It's Southern California. They're going to go to that game. It's the easiest ballpark to find.
Yeah.
And so they're going to show up to that. And if you told us, hey, we're really wanting to just build around Neto and O'Hoppe, and what we're going to do is bring up these guys to see what we can do with them, because we really think that 2025 could be a season for the young guys. And yeah, hey, how about that? Hope. How about that? Hope that isn't built in crossing our fingers and we want to contend. Hope that says we're going to let these guys develop, and then perhaps they're going to develop to a place where next year we might actually be battling for 500. We might actually be, and then 2026, we might actually be battling for a 3rd wild card spot, right? Like, let's be reasonable, but let's be hopeful. And we get none of that from the Angels.
This might be a wider conversation, but going to a game at Angel Stadium is, hey, what do you want to do tonight?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's Friday. Hey, you want to go to a game?
Yeah.
And I think that that's what is hard for us hardcore fans, our everydayers, people who follow this team every day. I think that we can miss that because when you live out in Los Angeles, going to a Dodger game is an event.
Right. It's like going to Disneyland, right? You have to plan the whole day around.
You got to get there at 2 p.m. for a 6:38 start. You know what I'm saying? And with an Angel game, the tickets are cheap. It's something to do on a Friday night. You and I have talked about this before. Like, when I was in high school, I had a Disney pass because it used to be really affordable for somebody who was in high school.
Right.
And it was like, hey, you want to go to Disneyland? Yeah, sure. And we'd go. And I think that that's kind of what it's like with the Angel Stadium. So they don't need to worry about attendance and all of that.
Right.
So.
To conclude this segment, John, I think what we've just decided is that we need Walt Disney back and Gene Autry back, right? That's what we need.
Dig them up. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. The Angels are back at it, playing the Royals 5:10 Pacific time. You can catch every pitch of the Angels hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels. Coming up on Locked On Angels, who should be called up? Who should go? Bye. Well, we're going to talk about all of that coming right up.
This episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk about FanDuel often on this show. It's America's #1 sportsbook. They have a little something different for you now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5, and their reward is 3 weeks free of NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube and YouTube TV. When you use the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. It's good for John and I because we don't get to watch our favorite football team here in Southern California. If you're a Rams fan, more power to you. But we're Niner fans, and so obviously the Rams are going to bump the Niner game. So with this plan from FanDuel, John and I, we get to at least watch 3 weeks of Niner games, and perhaps we might just buy NFL Sunday Ticket. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. When you're done here, make your second listen Locked On MLB with our pal Sully. He's going to get you ready for the playoffs, for the Fall Classic. He's going to get you ready for all of it, the MVP races, all that good stuff, and he's got you covered from every angle, base to base, foul pole to foul pole across MLB. Locked On MLB is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And the Angels are back at it tonight against the Royals, 5:10 Pacific time. You can catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels. How great was it to see Gooby get his Hall of Fame jacket? Nicest guy in the world, Mike. I think he's nicer than you.
I think he is nicer than me. Yeah, he's a great dude, and I love his analysis, and I love that he had a great career, World Series champion, and it was great to see him get honored. I loved when I was watching on the TV side, he's standing in front of the camera, and there's always the people that are like, hey, you got to keep waving, got to keep waving, got to keep waving, got to keep waving, right? And he's looking around, and he's, she's like, keep waving, and he's like, all right, okay. Like, those are really awkward moments. On TV, you need it to continue, but when you're there live, it just feels like 30 seconds is about 30 minutes in that moment. Johnny, let's talk about this young core and this young team. We love Neto and Shawnuel and O'Hoppe, and we love even Joe Adell, who has really improved, had a big hit last night. There's also some prospects that I think I would personally love to see at the major league level within the next couple of weeks. I know that you align with me on these prospects, and I think a lot of our everydayers will as well. Some of these names will be very familiar to you, but then there's also some names where I'd love to see these players come up and get a shot. So I'm going to start with the most obvious name, and that's Christian Moore. Guy was drafted this year, number 8 overall. He played in single A with the Inland Empire 66ers, just a couple of miles from my house, and we had talked about going and seeing him. He played 2 games, and then he got called up.
They were away games, too. Yeah. So it's not even like you had a chance to
Didn't get a chance at all.
Yeah.
But he crushed it in those 2 games. 11 at-bats, 6 hits, a homer, 6 RBIs, 2 doubles. Johnny didn't strike out at all.
Yeah.
Now, with the Trash Pandas, where he got called up, that's double A, 12 games, 47 at-bats, 18 hits, 5 home runs, 7 RBIs, 5 walks, 15 Ks, and an OPS of 1.165.
Whew.
Unbelievable. I know that there's been some discussions about how great he is offensively, but then there's been questions about his defense, and there are some minimal statistics that are available for minor league defensive stats. And so I did some digging. Here's what I found out. In 101 2/3 innings so far in the minor leagues, Morris had 47 chances to make a play at second base, no errors, and he's turned 4 double plays. So the guy has a perfect fielding percentage. He's playing average defense and turning double plays and not making mistakes, and every chance he gets, he's coming through with that chance. And that's, I think, all you can ask for this guy. If he's going to be this offensive juggernaut and then a neutral defensive player, I think that's pretty excellent, right?
Yeah, I agree. And the Twitter account Beyond the Halo did the Lord's work, Mike, and stitched together a video of every play and every opportunity at second base for Christian Moore. So I encourage you to check that out, because
Nice.
if you're wondering what he looks like out there, it's a great video. But you're right, 101 2/3 innings, 47 chances, no issues so far. There's probably been some plays that maybe don't count against him,
Yeah.
but possibly could have been made had it been, a different second baseman
Sure.
out there. So,
Sure.
but top level stats tell you that everything's okay. The kids are all right. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Mike, Caden Dana is 7-7 this year with a 2.74 ERA
Wow.
in 21 starts. You like that right there. 121 2/3 innings and 131 strikeouts.
So
Get
good.
this, a .97 whip. So
I love
a
whip.
sub
That's my
1
favorite.
whip. I know it's your favorite.
My favorite stat.
Over his last 5 starts, 33 2/3 innings pitched, 1.87 ERA, 39 strikeouts. And here's another one you like, Mike.
Yep.
4 walks.
Love it.
4 walks from Caden Dana. Man, this is a tough one because I know he's a prospect we'd like to see up with this team.
Yeah.
Going back to our conversation from last week, I don't want to see pitching get rushed. I don't want to see them struggle. But to your point that you've made prior to, or in our prior conversation, guys like Reed Detmers or Chase Silseth, they weren't putting up Caden Dana numbers.
Right.
And I think that's the big difference here. So if he were to get called up just to get a look, I don't think that that's the worst thing in the world. I just hope that they don't rush him because these numbers are appetizing. But it would be worth a shot, I think, to give him a start at the end of the season. You got the White Sox
right
pretty soon, I think before the end of the season. So maybe give him a mulligan, right?
Yep.
Give him an easy start and just get him comfortable with the bigs.
And the two names that we mentioned, Moore and Dana, John, they have both talked about how they're winners. And so I would love to see if they could be like lightning in a bottle for the Angels, for the culture that I guarantee you the guys that are already here that are kind of like that, the O'Hoppes and the Netos, would fall in love with these guys and would love playing with them. Now, here's a couple of names that you may not know, but I think that they deserve a chance to be called up. The first is Mason Erla. He is a bullpen guy, 1-2, 1.82 ERA in 28 games. He's got 1 start, 5 saves, 39 2/3 innings, 29 Ks, a 1.21 whip. Now, Erla is 27, so he's not a young guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's had 4 seasons of development under his belt, and this has been his best season in the minor leagues. And Eric Torres is another name that I've talked about often on this show. He was with Rocket City and had a great season, and then he got called up to the Salt Lake Bees. He's really struggled. So with the Trash Pandas, 27 games, 4-1, 2.31 ERA, 35 innings, 55 Ks.
Woo.
With the Bees, just 2 games, 0-1, a 22.50 ERA, 2 innings, 5 hits, 4 walks. So the walks are an indication that it could just be control issues. He's trying to figure out the hitters. But here's what you need to know about AAA. It's very different than AA. AAA is a hitters only kind of development for the Angels.
Mm-hmm.
AA is more where they develop those pitchers. And so he really was successful with the Trash Pandas. I think that that'll translate into the major leagues, and he could be a potential back of the bullpen guy for the Halos.
You know, what's interesting is we talk about altitude in Salt Lake, and that's why it's hitter friendly. Mike, the location issues were a thing for Carlos Estevez when he was pitching for Colorado. And one of the things that Perry Manassian identified was, hey, if we get him out of a high altitude place, because whenever he's away, his pitches move way more the way he would like them to move.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what's going on with Eric Torres. Ryan Zephyr-John is also a great option. 26-year-old righty, came over in that Luis Garcia trade. He's been great for Salt Lake so far. Not too bad this season. He's 1-3 in 30 games with a 3.33 ERA and has 7 saves. One name that I would mention too is Michael Darrell Hicks, who is also a reliever. He also just got moved up to AAA. He's had a great season with Rocket City Trash Pandas, 6-4 record, 1.73 ERA. He's relieved 30 games, 2 holds, 8 saves, 41 2/3 innings pitched. And he's just been really strong, 46 strikeouts. And then he moved up to Salt Lake. He's gotten into 2 games, an inning and 2/3, 5.40 ERA. He's only given up 1 run. And so, of course, that's going to inflate the ERA.
Yeah.
But it seems like he's also climbing the ladder, Mike. So I think that that's an interesting direction for the Angels. So those are just some of the names that we think the Angels could do well with if they gave them a look-see before the end of the season.
Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, Prize Picks allows you to just play against the numbers. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And right now you can win up to 100 times your money with Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And if you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play $5. So you don't even need to win. You just receive $50. It's a bonus. It's a gift. And that's spectacular. And then now with football season coming, they have this deal for you. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard. He plays for the Bears, was the #1 draft pick. That will get you 1 win on Prize Picks every single week in September. Only 1 yard, and you get an automatic win. And he's going to get more than 1 yard. He's going to be really, really great. 4 weeks of free wins for you. Don't miss this deal on Prize Picks. When September's over, it's over. So don't miss it. Download Prize Picks right now and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks, run your game.
Well, I already got upset earlier in the show because of Brandon Drury. But Mike, if we're going to talk about guys who should be called up to the major league roster, then we have to talk about the guys who need to get off the major league roster. And I think that there's some good options that we've listed because our thing is, and this will probably be our mantra the rest of the season, is that Mike and I want to see development.
Yeah.
Tired of chasing wins. Wins are great. But I know everybody's upset because we are at the bottom of the AL West with the A's, and the A's might have a better record than the Angels. #1, I say good. Yeah. Good. They deserve to have a worse record. This front office deserves to have a worse record than the chaos that is the Oakland A's and soon to be Sacramento A's and soon to be Vegas A's. TBD on that. But I say all that because #1, we can get ourselves a better draft position. #2, with guys like Carlos Estevez and Luis Garcia gone, like we've talked about, the wins are not going to come as easy as they used to. Right. And so this is the opportunity for the Angels to figure out what they have for the next month and a half and play some of those guys we just got through talking about. But in order to do that, these guys have to go. Why don't you start us out?
Yeah. Brandon Drury is the one that has to go. He hasn't been good this year. Hasn't stayed on the field consistently. That's part of the deal. Here's the biggest issue. He's not going to be a part of the future of the Angels.
Not at all.
I don't think he's going to re-sign. I don't think he's going to be back. And so I think that they have to DFA Brandon Drury to make room for some of the guys that we brought up in the last segment. And I think another name, John, and somebody that you and I have been fighting for, you and I would love to see play more, is Michael Stefanik. But the reality is that if you're not going to use him right, then why do you have him here, right? Yeah. It just doesn't seem like they have confidence in him. He's a contact hitter, yet you're having him bunt in key situations, and it doesn't seem like they like him on the defensive side. He just feels like a guy that is a body that's filling space right now until Christian Moore comes up or until somebody else comes up, right? And so if you're not going to utilize him, then get rid of him and bring somebody up that can develop, that can be a guy that you're like, yes, Kyron Paris, going to be awesome, and let's let him get some major league at-bats and continue to grow. So I think that those are 2 infielders that they can let go of and make room for some of the guys that we brought up in the previous segment.
Yeah, there's a couple of relief arms that the Angels could say goodbye to as well. Mike Bowman, of course, he's just somebody who is a body to replace Estevez and Garcia. In the bullpen, when they were traded, they picked up Bowman just so they could have somebody out of the pen. You don't need him. No. And I'm sure that he would land somewhere else just fine, but he could be replaced by somebody like Michael Darrell Hicks or a Mason Erla or an Eric Torres. Yeah. And so he would be one of the ones that has to go. Mike, I hate to say it because I've always been a big fan. Matt Moore has got to go. Again, he's at this point, if you couldn't trade him, then he's just kind of filling a space on the roster. And yes, he's a veteran. Yes, he's a lefty, but he's just not been as good as he was a year ago or even 2 years ago with Texas. And so I think that you have to move on from him at this point, especially when there's a need and an urgency to see what you have and give those guys a chance who are coming out of the bullpen. Again, like Michael Darrell Hicks, Mason Erla, Eric Torres. Those are the guys I would rather see over somebody like a Matt Moore.
I think Carson Fulmer has to be another name that they should release. They should DFA. I know that he's been a grinder in there for us. He's been kind of an opener for us. I know he's catching all of the ceremonial first pitches. I love that. He's like, hey, I don't know how much time I have left, so I want to be a part of everything. And I like Carson Fulmer, and I think that he would be a great asset to this team. But I think right now in the starting rotation, I would rather see development. I think Jack Kohanowitz being in the starting rotation, going 6 innings and giving up just 2 earned runs in his last start is the type of thing that you want to see from another young guy in the minor league. So Carson Fulmer leaves, and maybe this is where Caden Dana throws, right? Maybe this is where he gets an opportunity. And I would love to see Caden Dana be out there. And if he's learning, if he's making mistakes, it's going to be an opportunity to grow. Now, if he gets rocked, then you have answers like you did with Victor Mederos last night. Then you go, okay, we have to pause and figure that out. But then you could bring up a Davis Daniel, or you could bring up a Kenny Rosenberg to fill in that spot. The reality is that you got to stop chasing wins and you got to start chasing development. And I think that these are the decisions that the Angels have to make. The problem is that it still feels like they're a bit confused and a bit lost as to what this team really is, right?
Yeah. I would even say you bring back Reed Detmers to finish out the season, get 2 or 3 starts before the season ends.
Good idea.
And in that case, then you can, evaluate where he's at, get him around the big league club again, get him around Barry Enright, have the conversations you need to have. I think Detmers would be the perfect choice right there.
And I think that's a great starting rotation. Anderson, Canning, Detmers, right, for the rest of the year. Then you have Kohanowitz, and then you have a Caden Dana, or a flexible number 5 spot that you can put somebody in that could perhaps develop with him. And so, but you have 3 quality starting pitchers that have major league experience that can maybe potentially pop a 5, 6 inning, 7 inning start for you. And it gives some relief to the Kohanowitzes and the Danas that might come up and pitch at the end of this rotation.
Even somebody like Johnny Cueto might end up in the rotation simply because they need to get through this. You have to have a starter to get you through to the end of the season. And I think there's more opportunities for those relief arms to come up and show what they have, because that's what the Angels, the best thing they have going in the minor leagues is their relief arms, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And whether that speaks to how bad starting pitching is or not, regardless of that, they have some killer bullpen arms that they have not given a look to yet, and I think deserve a look. And so I would say that even though, somebody like a Cueto might take up a roster spot in the starting rotation, get rid of some of those relief arms that aren't part of your future. Give some of those young guys a chance, because I think it's time that you gave them a look and gave them a chance at the major league level.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB with our friend Sully. He's a guy that's got all the baseball knowledge, and he's going to make you smarter as a fan. Check out Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. It's a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.
Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube. Get into today's conversation by getting in the comments section. And on your way down there, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We'd love to have you. Mike, what do we have on deck for Wednesday's show?
ESPN had a report that there's been discussion about baseball potentially enforcing a 6-inning rule for starters.
Baseball, a.k.a. Rob Manfred.
Right. So we're going to talk about that, but then we're also going to talk about how that would impact our Halos. It's interesting. We'll talk about it tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right. We're looking forward to that conversation. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Wednesday.
Rob's sitting around going, how else can I drive baseball purists crazy?
How can I ruin